I see a lot of when it comes to issues with managers and employees. That's really kind of that number one thing, because now it really kind of creates that distrust. And once you lose that trust, you really lost the employee.
This is the Brandon Smith Show, and of course I'm your host, Brandon Smith, and the entire purpose of this show is one singular thing, and that is to help you live a life that much more free from dysfunction. So our topic today is an interesting one. This is one that I've never ever had on this show yet, and I'm kicking myself for never bringing it on the show. But we're going to talk about onboarding new employees. Like, how do you set that up well so they not only know what they're getting into, but you're creating that really great employee experience? And I can't think of a better person to have talk about this than you, Art. This is amazing. Art, thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you for inviting me.
Okay, so Art, before we jump into this, I want to make sure everyone knows how awesome you are. So Art Evans, that's your full name, and your title is Senior Director Talent Management at the Atlanta Braves.
Yes.
And so all those folks that make that stadium run well every game night, you're really thinking about how to create that experience for them, not just the customers that come in, but the employees, so it translates to the customers. And you and I have gotten to chat a little bit about your journey, and I just felt like I learned so much of that conversation. I wanted to kind of share it with my audience. So I'm going to stop talking. Tell us a little bit about what you do today for the Braves, and then how you got doing that. What's been kind of your journey up to this point?
Awesome. Well, as you stated, I currently work for the Atlanta Braves, and my role as the Director of Talent Management is really to focus on the employees once they walk in that door for their entire life cycle. And so a lot of the work that I do is really helping supporting the leaders just be better leaders. And so we do a lot of leadership development training. We do management training. And I always say that, if you want a really great culture, there's no culture god or culture fairy that's going to wave a wand and you're going to have a great culture. And it's not about because you had free food on Fridays. It's culture really comes from the leadership in the top, and the leadership sets the tone of the culture. And so it is the behaviors that the leaders bring into the workplace every day, their values, what they reward and recognize. And so it's really important to really first work with leadership to make sure that the leadership, we're all on the same page. We all understand what our values are, how we want to care for our employees, and we need to then emulate those behaviors because that sets the tone. I've been in organizations where you may have employees say, well, why do I have to do that? My leaders don't do it. And so anytime that I'm talking to a leader in an organization, that is one of the things that I bring up because employees are always watching your behavior. And so if you want a really great culture, it starts with leadership.
Yeah, I'm hearing you say too, in that they're not only watching your behavior, they're going to emulate it.
Yes.
So we can't do that whole thing that you and I've heard 1,000 times. Well, don't do what I do what I say.
Yes.
No, it doesn't work that way. I'm going to do what you do. So I love that you start with the leaders and you're really trying to align them and get them modeling the behaviors. Now, before the Atlanta Braves, what was your journey? What kind of got you down the path of talent management? I know some people kind of stumble into it. Some people knew they wanted to do it. Some people kind of fall in love with it when they take that first taste. What was yours?
Yeah, I think it started back when I was in college, and I would actually work the summers and be a camp counselor and work with youth. And so youth development has always been a passion for me since college. When I got into the workplace, I actually got involved with an organization called 21st Century Leaders. It's a youth statewide organization here in Georgia. I've been a board member for about 20 years with the organization. And early on, Bob Watson, who is the founder of this organization, we were really just starting out trying to create these youth camps, and we were ideating on what we could do during the summer. And we talked about kind of development. And Bob at one point said, well, Art, you go ahead, develop it, develop curriculum, develop. And so I started doing this for the youth leadership camp retreats. Since then, we've kind of grown over the years, and now we have organizations like Turner and Emory who are actually sponsoring week-long institutes for over 100 students every summer. But that was when I got my first taste of really kind of the development and helping people really kind of develop their skills. When I got into my first job at Turner Broadcasting, well, we call it Turner now. Well, actually, it's Warner Media. Let me be correct. My role was really started out in talent acquisitions and then moved into employee engagement and then later into kind of diversity and development. I then moved over into the Atlanta Hawks organization, where I actually led the kind of culture and talent development. It was a new role for the Atlanta Hawks. A lot of sports teams, there are only a handful of sports teams are actually at that stage of carving out a role like that. Atlanta Braves being one of them, that actually is not, it's outside of just your initial HR duties, responsibilities. You have someone like me who it's my full-time job to focus on talent. And so I think it was just really through the years of just kind of that passion around wanting to help people just become better and to develop themselves. That's where I really kind of got that passion.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Awesome. So let's dig into our topic of onboarding. So imagine you have a new manager or director. He's just hired a couple new people. They have no idea how to think about the first steps, day one, how to create a good initial onboarding experience. What are some things that would be good starting places for them?
I would say when you're thinking about onboarding new employees, one of the things that we did at the Atlanta Braves is we looked at how do we immerse the new employee into our culture and into our organization. And so we didn't want to just have a 1 hour kind of PowerPoint presentation about the organization. We really started to become very thoughtful on, if you're a new employee, how do we immerse you into this culture? And so our new hire program is actually called Opening Day. So we love to use a lot of baseball terminology. And, for a new hire, it is their opening day. And it's a full day of really immersion into the culture and the organization. They hear from business leaders. They actually take an amazing tour of our amazing facility at SunTrust Park, as well as the Battery. We do something very fun for them from a standpoint of all of our players have contracts, and you see on the news where they're actually signing those
big
contracts.
Deal when they sign those contracts, Art.
And so
I want to sign one of those contracts, Art.
It's really exciting. It's really exciting to see the players and doing that. So we wanted to actually recreate that experience for our new hires.
Oh,
and
cool.
So we actually set up kind of a background where they have all of the Braves step and repeat behind them. We give them some really great Braves gear, and we actually draw up a contract for them that they actually sign, and we take pictures of them actually signing their contract. We then post these pictures actually on all of our monitors throughout our organization. And so all of the employees will actually see who our new hires are, their name, their department, as well as seeing them sign their contract and being drafted to the team.
Wow, that's so cool. So let me see if I can summarize this in a way that even our listeners could kind of relate to. So you really take that whole day, you carve it out. We say, we're going to really be intentional about onboarding. We're going to give them an amazing tour of the facility so they know where everything is, how the magic is kind of done around here. We have them hear from leaders so they can kind of speak even about the culture and kind of what matters. And then we're going to even take them a little bit through that kind of that player experience.
Yes.
And make it really special for them, something that it posts internally, but they could even post on social media if they wanted to.
Yes.
To really to show the pride in joining that organization.
Yes, yes. And we also have a segment throughout that day where we actually provide them information on the history of the Braves, going back to the beginning when the Braves was founded many years ago. And so, the feedback that we've gotten from our new hires was such valuable information to really understand the history of the organization and the pride that's in the organization. And so we try to think about, different elements. And with that, I always say onboarding is not a one-day thing, and it is not a orientation. New hire orientation is a piece of actual onboarding.
I'm so glad you're making this distinction, because I think I would have confused the two. So, okay, please keep going. So that orientation and onboarding, tell us a little bit more about what the difference is, because it sounds like onboarding is much more important to think through in a bigger process.
Yes. Onboarding can last from 60 to 90 days. And so when you really think about new hire orientation, that's really just their first day, but it's their first experience. And that's why it's so important, the tone that you set on that first day. But onboarding for a new employee usually is between 60 and 90 days. And during that time, the new hire is really making a determination about the organization, about the management, about, am I actually going to want to stay here for a long time? And it is all about how you treat that employee over that 60 and 90 days. So they're observing, management style, communication, the care and concern. And so what we do is we've actually built tools for managers. And I always tell managers is that you are the most important role and link in onboarding. It is not an HR initiative, or HR owns that. HR helps support and facilitate it, but the new hire is going to be reporting to you every day, not HR. And so when they come into the next day or the next week, it's the manager and the team that they're going to be really getting to know and to assimilate into the organization. So we've built out what we call kind of manager onboarding guides, and they're tools for managers. And we give them kind of a guide and a checklist for the first 30 days, 60 days, 90 days. And so for a manager, whether you're a new manager or an existing manager, you now have a roadmap of, here are the things that I need to be thinking about with my new employee. One of the things that we did at the Braves was we actually created what we call a Braves Buddy program. And so the manager has to assign and find someone on their team who can be the Braves Buddy for this new hire. And the Braves Buddy also, we've created kind of a list and criteria for the Braves Buddy, so when they understand what their responsibilities are. And so the Braves Buddy is really there for, when you're a new hire, you feel like, I don't want to ask this question. It may sound stupid, or it may, or something like, where's the restroom?
So that's what you ask the Braves Buddy. That's where that's your buddy.
Yes,
question.
The buddy takes you out to lunch. The buddy just kind of checks in with you. It does another kind of a smaller tour of the organization, kind of tells you about, okay, well, this marketing team, we work with this team on this, and here's some people that you may want to meet. And so the Braves Buddy is really kind of that pal that really kind of is there with you on your onboarding journey. Now, the hiring manager also has responsibilities and roles throughout that, and that's really kind of checking in after that first week. How did the week go? Was there anything that we didn't provide that you need? Really kind of checking in 30 days later. And so we do this to make sure that the new hire is not only supported by as HR as we're onboarding them, but by their manager and their team.
Yeah, so we're already at break. And so when we come back from break, I'm going to tee this up because I want to get a little bit more into that toolkit that you provide the managers for the 30, 60, 90 days. Because I've got some questions. Like, I'm not sure. People often ask me, Brandon, how often should I be meeting with my direct reports? And I'd be real curious, like, how often should they be meeting with this new hire in the first 30 days, 60 days? So those kinds of questions, I'm going to ask you
Awesome.
right after break.
Awesome.
So stay tuned. We'll be right back. Here's your coaching minute for the week, presented to you by the Leadership Foundry. So credibility, as we know, is super, super important. Let's say now you've gotten into a new job. You've either got a new boss or a new team, and you're trying to build credibility really, really quickly right out of the gate. One of the easiest ways to do that is focus on proactive communication. We all do the reactive communication stuff. People text us, IM us, email us, and we respond. Focus on proactive communication, particularly status updates. It's so simple and easy, but it's a great way to provide quick clarity into what you're working on and build credibility. And I find it to be the best way to enhance trust quickly with a new boss. So put on your calendar either every Friday or every Monday, typically the end or beginning of a week, to send to your boss what are maybe those 3 to 5 things you got accomplished during the week, and what are the 3 to 5 things that you're going to work on the next week. And you'll find after about 3 or 4 or 5 weeks of doing that with your new boss, that they'll say, hey, those were really great. You don't need to send those anymore. I really appreciate what you've been up to. So give it a try. It's a quick way to build credibility and enhance trust right out of the gate. Welcome back to the Brandon Smith Show. Of course, I'm your host, Brandon Smith. We're coming back from break. And right before break, my guest, Art Evans, was kind of taking us through all the really cool stuff that you've been doing and working with the Atlanta Braves on to really onboard talent and create that amazing experience for the folks that really make that ballpark run and operate, that ultimately create the experience for all of us as guests and patrons. And I teed up right before the break. I said, okay, Art, you talked about this like manager toolkit. You said it in a nice general way. And you said, there's 30 days and 60 days and 90 days. And that was like, I'm salivating. Like, I want to know, what do we need to be doing as a manager in the 30, 60, 90 days in that onboarding life cycle? So, maybe I'll leave it open there. What are some key things that you really prescribe to those managers to say, gosh, you really got to be doing these at these points in time? It's going to make that experience for those employees so much better if you do.
I think something that is really critical for managers to do is to set expectations about the role. Truly go over what their job responsibilities are, and then set goals. I have had, in previous lives, with the organizations where companies, employees will come in and say, I still don't know what I'm supposed to be focusing on. I still don't really know what my role is. I know what my title is. And managers, it's important that they be very intentional. And within that first couple of weeks is to really sit down and let's go over your job responsibilities. Let's go over who you're going to be partnering with. Let's go over the teams that you're going to be working with. And here are my expectations based on your job responsibilities. And now let's set some goals for the next 6 to 9 months. Here are the goals that I want to set for you. The sooner that you can get employee focused on what their goals are and what their job responsibilities are, the more engaged they're going to be.
Beautiful. That's a soundbite, Isaac. Right there. That's beautiful soundbite. I love that, Art. That's beautiful. So, all right. A lot of my listeners right now love it. We can be very precise. Is that day 2? Is day 1 kind of the orientation you shared about signing day, opening day, all that great stuff? Is day 2 this conversation with the manager?
Yeah, I think the sooner that you can do that, the better.
Okay.
And so I would, managers, when I say about being intentional, you need to really block that time on your calendar and to truly be present, not doing 100 other things, but truly be present with the new hire. And going over the job responsibilities, going over, do you have any questions based on the job responsibilities?
Okay, so I'm going to ask even another clarifying question. It's going to feel like it's in the weeds, but this is going to be helpful for everyone listening. In a perfect world, how long would you recommend a manager block off for that to do it well?
I would say this is an ongoing conversation, so you don't have to block off 2, 3 hours. You can initially have an hour meeting with your new hire. But in that 30, 60, 90-day roadmap, you're going to be meeting with them very frequently, at least once a week.
So at least once a week.
Yes.
Great. So you should be checking in with them at least once a week for those
Yes.
first 90 days.
Yes.
All right. This is nice. So what I've found for all the folks I work with, all the organizations I touch, time's everyone's most precious resource, and everything is urgent all the time. And so if they don't put this on the calendar, it just isn't going to happen.
It isn't. And that's where I keep going back to being intentional. And there have been instances where managers may have even put it on the calendar, but they're not present.
Yeah.
You have to not only be intentional about the time that you're spending, but be present.
So we got this phone that I'm holding right
And
now. I got to put that down.
The computer, you shut it off, you mute your phone, and it is just being present with your employee.
Yeah. Is there anything else in terms of those either 30, 60, 90 days that you would say are kind of critical nuggets that need to occur to really maximize that experience?
I would say also the team engagement, ensuring that your new hire is truly integrated with the team. And that means that, your first week there, maybe you have a team lunch and you're welcoming your new hire and bringing the team together, and to have everyone kind of go around and share something about themselves, something personal and something professional, so that you can start to make some connections. And so the earlier that the new hire can actually start to really have that engagement with their team members and with their managers, that's the stuff that sticks.
Yeah. So maybe even sometime during that first week or two, try and get the whole team together for lunch and do something like this.
Yes. Yes.
Great.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other nuggets you can think of that we'd want to add in the to-do list?
Yeah. I would just say, constantly checking in with that new hire. At the end of the 30 days, hey, let's look back over the last month. Let's talk about some of your job responsibilities or assignments, how you're integrating with the team. Is there things that, from a company structure standpoint that you need to know? And so it's really just kind of continuing to touch base. That communication between the manager and the employee is critical. And to your point earlier, a lot of times we're always putting out fires and we feel like, it's this thing is the important thing. But it's actually the person sitting in front of you is the important thing.
Mm.
And that's when you can really show that your new hire, that you see them as an individual, as a person that you care and concern about them, the more they're going to be engaged.
Yeah. So I had another guest on, this was some months ago, and his name's Craig Sears, and he owns a lifeguarding business, basically. It's a pool company that basically serves neighborhoods and everything from maintenance, but in the summertime, he staffs them with lifeguards. So seasonal employees, college age mostly, but high school to college age. And we talked some about some of the generational differences from his perspective. I'd love to get your views on that. What do you see in terms of managing a multi-generational workforce, and any particular trends that you're seeing from whether we're talking about Gen Z, which might be the 20-year-olds, to millennials, which is kind of the mid-20s to late 30-year-olds,
Yeah.
Gen X, Boomer. Any observations you got around that, Art, for us?
Yeah. I would say for the generations that are coming into the workplace and the millennials, and not necessarily the millennials who are like 38, 39, but the younger millennials, communication is so important to them. And it is the tone also when you are communicating with them. They need to feel that you have care and concern for them. And generationally, we communicate differently. And it's not intentional, but it may just be that this is how I grew up communicating in my generation.
Yeah.
And what I have seen and noticed is that the younger millennials, they really are listening. They're looking for that communication. And what they're trying to hear and understand is that you have care and concern for me. And so that is something to be mindful of if you are, more of the older millennial or Gen X, or even other generations, and you have the younger millennials on your team. It's you have to be intentional that it has to come across that you truly, authentically care and have concern for them.
Yeah. So I'm hearing that in some ways we can get there, achieve that by having those regular meetings, being fully present,
Yes.
and asking them genuine questions about their experience.
Yes.
What are you learning? What are you not getting that I could be providing you? What else could be we could do to set you up for success?
Yes.
Nice. Okay. Fantastic. All right. So we have a little bit of time left. So I'm going to go to the other side of the coin. I didn't tell you I was going to do this. I'm going to go to the other side of the coin. I like keeping you on your toes.
All right.
So what should we not be doing? What are the things you'd be like, oh, these are the top 2 or 3 things that you've seen in your career? It's like, yeah, if a manager does that, that's going to be a bad onboarding experience and likely or could likely result in that employee deciding to find another home.
Yeah.
What are some of those bad things we want to avoid?
I would say, one of them that you mentioned earlier is the do as I say, not as I do. And sometimes, from a generational standpoint, there are people in certain generations that they're not aware that they're doing that. But millennials, they pick up on it pretty quickly. And so just being very mindful of, are you asking something that you're not doing yourself? And that is, I see a lot of when it comes to issues with managers and employees. That's really kind of that number one thing, because now it really kind of creates that distrust. And once you lose that trust, you really lost the employee. They're checking in every day, but they're not fully engaged, and you're not getting the best out for your team, your department, or the business.
So being aware that you're being watched and being aware that your actions need to match to what you're expecting of them.
Yes, yes.
So if you're expecting them to, if they see a piece of trash on the ground, pick it up, then you should be looking for pieces of trash on the ground and picking them up yourself.
Yes. Sometimes leaders fall into the trap of, I am here to direct people. And the leader that people really respect is the leader that can truly understand not only who you are, your role, and empathize with you. That's the leader that someone respects. And so it's truly understanding and just being aware of that. And like I said, it's not like leaders have bad intentions. They don't. But whether it's generational or whatever, it's really just being more mindful of that and how we show up every day.
Yeah. Are there any other things you would suggest we avoid?
I would say if you are a manager that is not big on communication, you want to correct that. You want to make sure that you are communicating as much as possible. What I've seen, and this happens in a lot of organization, is that the communication stops at the top. It's where all the strategy happens and all the plans happen, and those folks right there, they're getting the communication, but it's not being cascaded down. And because we're going 100 miles an hour, but we have to carve out that time, be very intentional, make sure that we are, because the more I'm able to communicate to you, that also really helps with the engagement.
Yeah, totally. I love it. And again, the other point in all this today that I want to make sure that we don't overlook is you're very thoughtful about how not only you create that strong onboarding experience, but what I think, and a lot of people don't do that. Most people don't do that. But then you also go one step further and say, and how can I tie their experience to what we want our ideal customer experience to be?
Yes.
So they're experiencing the product or service in a way that then they can translate that to others.
Yes, and it doesn't matter what industry you work in, whether you're in the hospitality industry, the retail industry, the sports industry, the media industry, whether it's your fans or your customers or your clients. It's important to have a great employee experience in order for you to have a great fan experience, customer experience, and client experience. And there has been research and studies done on this to where it results in higher earnings in every industry. And so it is so important that we really focus on that employee experience. And that's where manager development training comes from, and leadership development and training, because I always say people don't know what they don't know. And that doesn't mean they have a bad heart or they have bad intentions, but that's where the training and development comes from, to help them with that awareness.
Yeah, that's a beautiful way to, that's great. Like, you put a perfect bow on this at the end. So I ask all my guests this question: what's one life hack you have for us on how we can live our life more free from dysfunction, whether we're talking about personal life or professional life? What's one life hack you have for us?
My life hack is really around empathy and compassion when we are communicating and interacting with each other. It is not to take it personal, but to also have some empathy where you can understand where the other person is coming from. And that's whether it's in your personal life or your professional life.
Yeah. And it ties into things you've been talking about earlier today. Be fully present, show you care.
Yes.
Love it.
Yes.
Okay, so if people want to learn either more about you, more about the great work you're doing with the Braves, where can they go?
LinkedIn. They can find me on LinkedIn at Art Evans, and of course with the Atlanta Braves. And I would say that, joining the Braves organization, have amazing leadership team, and we have a leadership team that truly they care about their employees. It's a very professional environment. As I go into that organization and that culture every day, I have an extra pep in my step. And so my role, and I always, when I'm talking to the managers, my role is to support you and to continue to be a better leader and a better manager, so that you can support your team and develop high-performing teams.
Yeah, and we were talking before the break, and you're making a very important point we didn't get a chance to talk about on the show today. But the team had a very long homestand recently, and so all those folks are working hard.
Yes.
But you said they still have this kind of extra kind of pep in their step, and it's the team's winning, but also it comes from the top, from leadership.
Yes.
So I'm reading between the lines. But what I'm hearing you say is, if we want our people to kind of go that extra mile and have that extra level of energy,
yes,
what are we doing as leaders to really create an environment for that?
Yes.
So they can have that extra stamina and energy when they are going on long stretches.
Yes.
Nicely done. Well done. Well, thank you, Art. You're an absolute gift. I'm so glad you came on. I'll have to have you on again.
Awesome. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, this was great. You said this was your first podcast. Ridiculous.
Very true.
I don't believe him.
Very true.
He's a master, folks. A master. Even like wrapping things up at the end with nice closing statements. He's a pro. He's a pro. And thank you for watching and listening. Of course, join us every Sunday where we drop a new show at 7:30 p.m. And you can listen on iTunes. You can watch us on Facebook Live. And if you haven't been to the Workplace Therapist, check it out recently. It's got great, not only archives of old shows, it's got blogs, articles, resources, all there to help you. And until our next show, have a great week and an awesome life.
What?